Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about detransitioning, a topic that rarely gets discussed in the mainstream because it's not really beneficial to the gender ideology left that is being pushed on kids 24/7, 7 days a week, all throughout schools. So let's break this down, watch this episode together, and talk about it.
Well, Ryan, thank you for being here and talking about this because you're right. If you question this at all, you get labeled really quickly,
You
correct?
do immediately as transphobic.
Why do you think that is?
I think that a lot of the transgender community, they push so much for acceptance that when you immediately or anytime you start to question them, even if it's out of the kind of goodness of your heart to try and make sure that they're making the right decision, anything that goes against their narrative is just immediately labeled as transphobic.
This is such a valid point. I know for myself, if I'm posting on TikTok or Instagram, I've already gotten messages from people who know me personally or who have known me for a couple of years now, who find out my position on, transitioning of children specifically and how I don't think that it's okay. And immediately I'm a transphobe. Immediately I'm a hateful person. Immediately I have a phobia. Immediately I am put into a box that puts me as a horrible person that can't even be talked to. I've been blocked, deleted, all sorts of things. And what she's saying is so true. I mean, if you try to have a logical conversation, even if you're not disagreeing, but you're just asking questions that are inquisitive on this topic, it's like, no, you're not allowed to. Just nod your head and agree and be quiet.
And what happened when you began to schedule time to get a double mastectomy?
I haven't had any top surgeries, but I did get approved for it.
Okay, that's what it is. You got approved for
I
it.
did. I got approved. And how that worked, it was scarily easy to do because I had just called a therapist and I had scheduled one appointment, for like a 30-minute session to talk about it. And I essentially walked in. I said, I identify as transgender and I want to get top surgery. And we chatted for a bit, maybe for half an hour. And at the end of the session, she wrote me an approval letter to send to my insurance. And then I got approved just like that.
A 30-minute session with a therapist for the first time. And after that first 30-minute meeting, the therapist wrote her an approval letter to have her breast removed. I mean, that's insane to me. And this is a problem that I have with the trans movement is that it's such an extreme that all you have to do is say, I think I'm feeling this way. And there's a doctor to prescribe you hormones, to schedule you a surgery. And it's like, you would think there will be more of a, let's talk about this. Let's really dive deep and dissect this for you to make sure that you're making the right choice. I mean, we're talking about physical surgery to remove body parts that cannot be given back to you.
You went in, you said to Planned Parenthood.
Yes.
And they gave you testosterone immediately.
Yeah, I essentially just made a phone call and said, I want to transition. And it was immediately given. I got a prescription and went to pick it up like a week later.
Wow. So she calls Planned Parenthood, and after a week, she's given testosterone hormones. There was no evaluation. There was no, can you come to the office and we can talk about this? There wasn't even a diagnosis. It was self-diagnosed by the patient. And it was done over the phone. They didn't even see her in person. This is the craziness that I'm talking about, right? Like, we're talking about hormone therapy. We're talking about surgeries. We're talking about life-changing procedures that cannot be undone. And we have these professional institutions, medical institutions like psychiatrists and facilities like Planned Parenthood that are just, check mark, here you go.
Did they ask you questions? Did they do any psychological testing? Did they ask you why? What was your motive?
It was completely self-diagnosed. Well, self-diagnosed. I claimed that I had gender dysphoria and I wanted to transition, and they didn't really ask me any questions about it. I just called them and I said, when can I get this? And they just said they needed to write me a prescription for it and send it.
You're saying you don't know that you would have been able to carry that burden to 18.
I know for a fact that I definitely would not have been able to make it to where I am now without the medical professional help that I was given at the age I was. I wouldn't be here.
What is it about it that would have been more than you could endure?
It was just being stuck in a body that wasn't mine for too long. I could not handle that.
I definitely feel for Reese 100%. Gender dysphoria is no joke. It's a very real condition, and when it hits, it has to feel horrible.
How were you certain that that is what it was versus something else?
I always knew. I went to bed at 5 years old. I want to be a boy. Wake me up tomorrow as a boy. It was always boy toys, boy McDonald's meals, boy everything. I was a boy, just not on the outside.
To hear Reese say that they knew that they were a boy or meant to be a boy because as a kid, They wanted to play with the boy toys, and they wanted to do things that boys were doing. So they interpreted that as, I'm supposed to be a boy. The gender roles is what you were rejecting, right? The idea that because I'm a girl, I'm supposed to wear a dress. Because I'm a girl, I'm supposed to like the color pink. Because I'm a girl, I'm supposed to play with dolls. And instead, I want to run around and get dirty. I want to play basketball. I want to run. I want to play with the G.I. Joes. I want to do things that boys get to do that are more masculine. That to me is perfectly fine. I wonder if we lived in a more open society where we didn't have these strict, like, you're a girl, you do this, you're a boy, you do that, if we would have the influx of trans issues in this country. If kids were allowed just to explore what they wanted to do without feeling like they had to be in a box. What if we said, hey, Susie, or whatever your name is, if you want to play sports and you don't want to wear a dress and you want to participate in more traditionally masculine things, go ahead. Have fun. Would Susie still want to be a boy? Or would Susie be happy being a girl, allowed to actually play and do what she wants to do without feeling stigmatized by it? I actually relate with what Reese is saying. Like, I grew up and I definitely was more in tune with my feminine side, and I definitely was not a sporty person. I was not the traditional boy. I definitely felt more connected to females, and at one point in time, I thought maybe I'm supposed to be a girl. Like, I went through those thoughts when I was a kid as well, because I didn't fit the mold of what a boy is supposed to be at a very young age. And because everyone around me was saying, you're supposed to be doing this, I felt like something was wrong with me, and so therefore I was in the wrong body. So I know exactly what they are talking about, but thank God I grew up in a time where being affirmed when it comes to these issues was not a thing. Because if it was, who knows what could have happened to me and what road I would have taken. And I'm so glad that I was able to grow out of that, and I was able to come to the realization that I can authentically be myself as a male and be in tune with my feminine side and my masculine side, and I don't have to have surgery or have to re-identify myself to fit a mold because society won't let me just be me. You know, today's kids, you have a thought that isn't in the box of the gender that you're born as, and suddenly you're having all these adults affirming that maybe you should have surgery, maybe you should have testosterone, maybe you should socially transition, as opposed to maybe you should accept who you are authentically and be okay with the fact that as a male you're more feminine, or as a female you're more masculine, and it doesn't mean that you're supposed to be the other sex.
And I'd like to now add another person to this conversation, founder of Trans Youth Educational Resources, Eli Ehrlich, who's been a guest before.
Oh, here we go. This is where things go left for me. So Eli Ehrlich, for those who don't know, is a trans activist. Eli was born male and identifies now as female. And the major issue that I have with Eli is they actually got in trouble not too long ago for going on Instagram and making a post where they pretty much solicited selling testosterone and hormone blocking therapies to children, pretty much telling kids, listen, if you can't get your hands on testosterone, just send me a message privately and I will make sure that I get you the drugs that you need. Now, Eli is not a medical professional, but took it upon themselves to offer puberty blockers to children.
Trans people, to put it simply, just want to be left alone.
Is that true? Do trans people want to be just left alone, or are they insisting that everybody stand up and make an affirmation that they're doing the right thing in the right way at the right time? Because those are two different things.
I'm so glad that Dr. Phil pushed back and said, are you sure that trans people want to just be left alone? You're pretty pushy on your agenda.
It's also important to point out the number one reason for detransition is because transphobia.
That's a very blanketed statement, and also a very generalized statement to say that the number one reason is because of transphobia. Eli was also on a feminist debate that I had reacted to on TikTok, and when the discussion came about the wage gap, which doesn't even exist, a person on the conservative side stated how, like, women and men structure their lives differently, and that women aren't going for the same jobs that men go for, which is why there is a gap in some pay. But it's not because the opportunity isn't there, it's because women just don't want those jobs. And Eli's response was, well, that's because of sexism. So now you're trying to get in the minds of women and say that you're not going for those jobs because you hate yourself and you believe in misogyny and sexism against yourself, so you're not going for those positions. No, maybe a woman knows what she wants and what she doesn't want, and it has nothing to do with sexism. In the same way that maybe a person who is detransitioning is doing so because they realize that they made a mistake. And it's not because they are transphobic about themselves or they hate themselves. Maybe it's because they realize that they made a mistake. Could that be it?
Dr. So, why do you think young people are being incorrectly diagnosed with gender dysphoria? And should those who are wait to get transitions?
Absolutely. There should be a longer period of time. And most importantly, there needs to be a proper assessment done. I really take issue with this narrative that children, quote unquote, know their true selves, or they know their gender identity if they believe that they're transgender, or that detransition is purely due to social stigma or due to transphobia. If you actually talk to detransitioners, as I have, you'll hear the reasons as to why they have chosen to detransition, why they have regret about their decisions, in many cases having undergone medicalization. There's so many other issues that these young people are struggling with, whether it is being on the autism spectrum. They have, many of them, if not all I've spoken to, have a history of sexual trauma. They are not comfortable with their sexuality if they are gay. They may have anxiety, depression, and in some cases, as in Ryan's case, if it's a young woman who reaches puberty, is not comfortable in her body, she thinks that because she doesn't like being sexualized by society, that means that she's actually a man, or she's so-called non-binary, even though there are only two genders. Even for young women who don't like having a period, they believe that that means that they're actually a man. And I question, do children actually have the capacity to make lifelong permanent decisions about their bodies? And do they really understand what these interventions involve? I don't think they do. Children also receive so much attention and praise nowadays for identifying as anything other than their birth sex. And we see this with young people. 20% of Generation Z identifies as LGBT+. So young people are incentivized. I don't believe this is purely due to social acceptance. There's no way that 1 in 5 young people identifies as something other than their birth sex. That's ridiculous to me. So the fact that this is being not only it's being pushed in education, I mean, that's the issue I have, is that it's not an objective approach. It's very much about there's only one right outcome. And if you don't follow that outcome, then you're in trouble.
Dr. So just dropped the mic. Everything she said was so on the money, and she was on the money because the faces of Eli and Reese they didn't know what to do. They were just rolling their eyes, they were looking around, they were shocked, because you can't really argue when a doctor is in front of you telling you, no. There are two genders, and this is not as black and white as the left and the trans activists want to make it seem. If you guys like my content and you want to support, please support my channel by hitting that subscribe button, liking the video, and of course commenting on the video so that it helps my algorithm. Also follow me on TikTok. I'm at 73,000 right now. And also follow me on Instagram, where I am getting canceled every single day just for you guys. If you guys enjoyed this content and this video, more is coming. Until next time, peace.